I'm Danny, that witch next door, and you're listening to That Witch Podcast. Well, hello, neighbor. Welcome back to another episode of That Witch Podcast. If you haven't been here before, hi, I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door, and I'm going to be your host, your guide, your mentor, and instructor in all things magic, witchcraft, astrology, and witchy business. And I am very excited for our episode today. This, in true fashion of today's episode topic, the idea really did just come through me in the midst of recording and creating some content one day. And I was so excited to run with this because I think that this is something that's not educated about very frequently. It's talked about a lot. And what is this I'm referring to? That would be the art of channeling. And you know, it's funny. Channeling, I guess, is an art. I could call it an art form. But most accurately, channeling is a practice. Channeling is definitely a skill. I personally believe every single one of us, every single being, has the ability to channel. Why do I think this? Because I believe that we are all connected by the collective unconscious. And I think that that means we're able to kind of plug into and tap into that network at any given time. There were definitely times, particularly in ancient history, I'm talking like Paleolithic era, that we were much more likely in tune with this ability and with this skill set that we all have. And I think that it was something that was a lot more frequently taught because it was much more valued at that time. And throughout the course of human history, we found ourselves as a human race in a time where this kind of skill and practice started losing its popularity. And therefore losing its, I don't mean power, its actual power, but its stamina, its momentum. That's what I'm thinking of. Over time, it kind of lost its momentum. And more than anything, its oomph as far as greater society was concerned. But as we as practitioners of energy and magic and witches know, we know that that was just mainstream, right? Underground rules, its value never went away. Its power never went away. Its momentum really never went away. But when we're talking about people, folks on the grand spectrum, yes, this is a skill that has been really dimmed and diminished, and it's definitely been attempted to be squashed out of us to no avail, however, because I believe that this will always be available to us. What I think's interesting, though, is that what does unfortunately happen in the spiritual community, the community where this practice and skill, it never died. It never lost its momentum and power. Like I said, yada, yada. However, it got crazy exploited, unfortunately, by many members of the spiritual community and still does to this day. Like all the time. This is why I wanted to do an episode about this, because I see this all the time. And I find this phenomena something that I have to mentor clients about quite often because of it. So in our influencer era that we have found ourselves in, and honestly, long before social media, what's happened in the spiritual community is people have gone, oh, I have this skill set, I have this practice, and that makes me special and better than you and more skilled than you. And therefore, you need me in order to access this skill and this practice. When the truth is, we all have the ability to do this. We really, truly do. And I think that the only reason anyone is, big major air quotes here, any better than anyone else at it is only that of practice. And I don't actually think you can necessarily be better or worse. Here's what I think. Here's what I really believe determines the quality of channeling, whether it's the channeler or the message they're channeling or all of the above. And that's genuine, real trust in one's intuition. You got it. Spoiler alert for the whole episode. That's literally all it takes. I promise. All it takes is trust in your intuition. Now, are there some other basics that I really think you should keep in mind so you can tap into and use the skill in a really sustainable and safe and healthy way for yourself? Yes, and we'll go over those. But technically, all you need, items required, trust in your intuition. I believe that channeling looks very, very different person to person. Sometimes channeling might look like whatever it is you're stereotypically picturing channeling looks like right now. What are you picturing in your head right now that's stereotypical? Someone channeling a spirit guide or channeling an angel or channeling extraterrestrials. What are you imagining right now? Okay. That, whatever you're picturing, yes, that is what channeling can look like sometimes. But channeling also looks like automatic writing. Channeling also looks like somebody giving a slammin' tarot reading or any kind of psychic reading for that matter. You guys hear me channel all the time on the podcast. I wish I had like specific examples off the top of my head. You know what the best example is? Are the pep talk episodes. So every time I do a season's pep talk episode, so the Virgo season pep talk, the Leo, and so on and so forth, most of those episodes are just channeled information. It is, I really kind of cleanse and ground and center my energy before I record those. And I really tap into the vibration of that sign. And that means I gather up everything I know about it. So I'm definitely activating my left brain and all of my logic and all of the just information I've learned and gathered, okay? And then I allow that information to flow through the lens of some kind of empowering and strengthening and uplifting message. And I trust the entire time that whatever I say is what all of you need to hear at that time for that solar season. That's exactly how I prepare for those episodes and how I execute those episodes. And there are large portions of those episodes, therefore, that I'm just purely running off of. It feels like an automated motor behind me almost. It almost feels like I just barely perfectly know what to say right before I say it, barely, to a point where it's not distracting. When I describe it that way, that sounds horrifyingly distracting, especially to my ADHD brain. I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine if someone was standing behind me saying, and I had to somehow not get distracted? Yeah, no, somehow it's not distracting, but that's the best way I can describe it. It's almost like that. Now, channeling didn't used to look that way for me. It's it has looked different, and it does look different for me all the time, depending on the situation. And I think, my friends, this is really where we get hung up and thrown off, is because that random kind of day-to-day, this is not the right word, but kind of generic channeling, and not even generic, just it's almost mundane because we do it all the time. We don't realize it, but we really do hook into our intuition and just do a movement, make a decision, speak a word, whatever it is, without actually having that purposeful intention. All of a sudden it just came from us and we did it. We trusted that. We all do that so much more than we realize. But the reason it's been so overshadowed and kind of outshined is because of, and this is really where, like I said, these big portions of the spiritual community have done such a disservice to this, is because they use the marketing strategy. Technically, that's what it is. It's a sales and marketing strategy to make yourself seem like the only one, right? It's very common business strategy and practice to make yourself seem like the only resource, the only source for that information or that skill. But we here, neighbors of That Witch podcast, That Witch neighborhood, we know that business ethics and professionalism ethics are morphing and evolving and changing now more than ever. And we know that we don't have to be the only one. We don't have to have the only source and keep it all to ourselves and make sure, right, that everyone comes to us. We know that we can swap and share and collaborate and lift up and give credit to, right? And refer and recommend, and therefore share in this never-ending abundant pool of consuming. Because that's all that business is. It's just a never-ending pool of people consuming services and practices and skills and products and items, right? Well, I want to take this concept and start offering it to you more and more in the sense of these spiritual skills. You, right now, you listening to this podcast. Yes, I'm talking to you now. You have these skills. You do. You have this ability. I promise you, I do not like speaking in extremes and absolutes, but that's how wholeheartedly I have this belief. I know that we all have this ability to be able to plug into the collective unconscious, tap into our intuition, into our higher selves with our spirit team and guides. And we're able to essentially download and collect information from that and export it. That's really all that it is. And that's why so many people call it channeling and the downloads that I receive. I think that this has been a little bit, people have started giving a little bit of woo-woo connotation to those terms. And I hate even using the fucking phrase woo-woo because I just think it's so minimizing and invalidating. And I will say, though, I realize how big of a buzz term downloads has become and how big of a buzz term channeling has become, especially with platforms like Instagram and TikTok, really specifically, because of the live options, right? To be able to go in and watch creators go live and do these live readings and live channelings, we come across these same people that, like I said, have also existed long before social media, throughout history, of the people that make it, they do all the bells and whistles, and they use all the words and the hand motions and the facial expressions. They use all those words that make it feel like they're special and you're not. And thank goodness you found them so you could hear this message. Otherwise, you never, ever would have before. And my friend, I hate but don't hate to burst your bubble. That's not true. That's not true. If your guides want you to get that message, they're going to deliver you that message. And guess what, boo? You could miss that message over and over again, and they will keep delivering it to you. That is the fucking beauty of our cyclical existence, quite honestly. That's why we can have that trust in our intuition and our trust in our guides and our path, and why we can trust in whatever methods we have for decision making in any given life incarnation that we have, because I promise the message will continue getting delivered. You're not going to pass it by and it's never going to come back again. If you didn't happen to jump on that TikTok live of that one person who pulled that one card, like, I promise you that that potential and big life-changing message would have found you another way at another time when you needed it just as much, okay? So that's why I really want you to understand this first. I really want to strip all the bells and whistles. I want to take all the pretty paint off. I want to, I'm using my analogy today as a big makeup wipe, and I'm just wiping away all the makeup. And I want you to see it for what it really is, because it is just as beautiful in and of itself, without all the glitz and without all the glamour, without all the light shining on it. I promise it's just as profound. I promise it's just as magical. I promise it's just as enchanting. I think that when we get wrapped up in the other, right? Capital O, in the other. But when they do it, I promise you that you have that magic within yourself. Now, this means you don't have to be anything special in order to do this. Awesome. Check. Number one, I get to be exactly who I am right here and now to be able to spiritually channel. Dope. Amazing. Number two, I do have to have trust in my intuition, and that is a big hang up. That one is a little bit trickier, but with that, we can practice. More on that later. Next would be being open to all of the different avenues and all of the different pathways for the channeling to take place. This, in my opinion, is really where the magic happens. When you realize that spiritual messages are everywhere, you can really, really unlock your perception and therefore your spiritual connection. This doesn't mean looking at every tiny detail and sign that you get as this big, giant, profound meaning and message from the universe, right? No. However, I don't want you to think that those big, giant times are the only times that a message is going to be delivered to you. So, for example, you do not have to have like a near-death experience or some kind of crazy traumatic experience, event, or tragedy happen to you in order to fill in the blank. There are so many people that are like, yeah, but nothing crazy's ever happened to me. So I don't care. That has nothing okay, well, so far at this point in your life, some big ginormo event hasn't been part of the deal so far, hasn't been part of the path so far. That doesn't mean that you aren't capable of experiencing big, profound spiritual messages and connection. Now, the best way to open yourself up to all of these is making your end of the connection known, okay? Now, a lot of people, in my opinion, when I teach them this, they think that they have to make their end of the connection known so that their guides know to pick up the phone. No, no, no. That's not what I mean. I promise you this. I promise. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you say, your guides are there and they probably had some kind of understanding and inkling at the least, knowing that you were going to do whatever that was. Okay. So nothing surprises them. Okay. That's not who it's for. When you establish your end of the connection, my darling, you're doing that for you. You are telling yourself and all of the shadows and fractals of yourself that doubt these abilities, not just spiritual abilities, but the parts of you that doubt any of your abilities, right? Those shadows that we're always actively reparenting, nurturing, and tending to, right? They still exist for all of us, no matter how much shadow work we do. The reason you want to establish your connection and really make it known is so that all of those different doubting and cynical and critical parts of yourself, and I mean like overly critical, hear that, know that, understand that, feel that boundary get put in place. This is not a place for self-doubt. This is not a place for me to neglect my own beliefs, right? That's a boundary that you're stating within yourself, and you are making a really grand and sacred gesture to yourself by making it. So establishing your end of the connection can look like a lot of different things. It could literally be a singular event where maybe you do a mirror ritual and you speak out loud to yourself and therefore to your greater self, like your higher self, your guides, your intuition, the universe, spirit, whatever, and all that incorporates for you. Maybe that's speaking some sacred and special words of proclamation in the mirror to yourself and all of those different fractals. But it also can look as simple as pulling tarot every day. I'm serious. It could be pulling an oracle card once a day. It could be, asking your spirit guides to control your music shuffle for the day and interpreting messages based on the music that comes through. It could be, there are so many ways to metaphorically roll the dice. So closing your eyes and pointing to a certain picture that you're going to use that day. Or I want you to take that analogy and apply it into your life in whatever way makes sense for you. Where in your life can you metaphorically roll the dice? Where in your life can you metaphorically hit the shuffle button and let the universe provide, right? You hit the shuffle button, you roll the dice, and the internet, nice. And the universe provides, whatever that is, okay? This is one of the best ways to establish your end of the connection. You're essentially picking up the phone. What do kids these days even think? We used to be able, that metaphor used to make sense, right? Pick up the phone. But now it's like, okay, I pick up my phone all day. That doesn't mean I'm talking on it. But you know what I mean, right? That's all that establishing the connection is picking up your end of the line and being willing to talk, but most importantly, being willing and able to listen. I find that this is where most practitioners get the most hung up and the most held back in this practice, which is literally a practice. It's just trial and error and practice, just doing it over and over again. And this is where the most challenge and stagnancy starts coming from. Is I find that the practitioner or the witch is doing all the talking. And I have to remind them, when was the last time that you just asked? When was the last time that you just asked and left that totally open-ended for an answer to naturally flow through? This is where the nuance of channeling comes through, okay? This is where, as far as explaining this via audio speaker to you is going to be a little dicey, a little sticky. So there's obviously this part of channeling that is very beyond explanation, beyond teaching. And it is just a doing and a practicing, I promise. And it's why at the end of the day, it's a muscle that you work out over and over again, more than anything, okay? It's not like other things that you learn where the more books you read on it, the more you learn about it. It really doesn't work that way with spiritual channeling. In fact, I find that if you get too far caught in the educational aspect of it, it holds you back from just doing it and practicing it yourself, which is where the most learning comes from. It's very different for each and every being, for each and every human. A wonderful place to start is understanding the clairs. So you may have heard the word clairvoyant, claircognizant. These words refer to different psychic abilities and skills, or sensory centers, if you will. They say, it's all up for discussion, right, and debate, but they say that you can be born with certain ones and born without others. I think it's more proportionate, like different aspects of our personality that we're born with, where you can share these things in common. We all technically have the same things in each of us, but just at different ratios. And that's really how I see psychic abilities and psychic traits as well. I think that we all have all of them. They're just at different proportions than one another. So you might hear messages, you might hear voices, you might hear signs, you might hear sentences, you might hear breaths, you might hear sounds. This is referred to as clairaudience. And honestly, in a lot of modern psychic work, we're starting to branch away from referring to the clairs at all. Because I think that they can almost categorize us. We start to over-identify with the categories and shutting ourselves off to the other categories, which is why I really am not going to go into each of the clairs in actual detail here, okay? You might hear messages, you might hear sounds, but you also might see things. You might see visuals. These could be pictures, very graphic and vivid. They could just be shapes and orbs and blobs and colors. You could just sense things. Your body might physically have a certain feeling or sudden state of being, okay? The chills, the shivers, the sweats, things like that. Obviously, barring anything outside of a genuine, health response your body's having at any given moment. I'm talking about when you're specifically channeling, though, okay? And we're opening ourselves up and purposefully being sensitive to these other feelings and experiences. You want to pay attention to how your body physically feels, the different sensations coming over your body. And again, that can be visual, that can be auditory, that can be this sensing and feeling, and it can also be just a knowing. And this is kind of what I described to all of you when I'm talking about the solar season episodes and the experience that I have. That's what is very commonly referred to as claircognizance. And it's this inner, deeper than your own bones, deeper than the own core of you right now, knowing. Something that deep just knows. And you very likely have experienced one or many of these since you were very, very young. We're the most open to these abilities when we are young, and very dependent on our environment and our conditioning and our backgrounds. Everything can really, really shape our experiences with those skills. So some of us grow up and we're like, yeah, listening to me on this episode, right? Talk about all those things. Yeah, Danny, I really remember that. It was cool. It was magical. I used to be able to see this, blah, blah, blah. And for some people, it could be this very haunting feeling. Other people, it might be a very shame-filled feeling. It's very, very different for each of us, and it's very dependent on our environment. But because as children, we are at some of the most pure we can be in our incarnation, we tend to be very, very close with these traits and these abilities. They're not nearly as jaded and desensitized and minimized and dimmed when we're kids as they are as they do get when we're older. So sometimes that helps is tapping into the past a little bit and picking up on or making note of any memory recall that you have when you think about this. Maybe something came to you right now while you're listening to the episode, but maybe it will still come to you. Just let this whole episode kind of be a big, profound seed that gets planted. And try to keep an open spiritual mind. That's ultimately my best tip for the nuance of channeling. You gotta trust in your intuition, like I said, of course. But ultimately, you have to keep an open spiritual mind. It's okay to think critically. It's okay to ask questions. And I think that we all know the difference between asking critical questions and being cynical of ourselves and minimizing our own experiences and minimizing our own thoughts. When we do this over and over again, I mean, you would be shocked at how often you're just slamming your end of the phone. You're just slamming your end of the phone on the headset and just hanging up. When there's this message, this simple message trying to get through, but because it's not showing up in golden sparkling robes of an experience or whatever, it just gets the phone slammed down and hung up on it. Just totally gets shut away. That's what I mean by keeping an open spiritual mind. A lot of what I teach, like in my Think and Grow Witch mentorship, where I'm really working with somebody one-on-one and aligning their spirituality into all of the various areas of their life, so much of what I teach is really embracing the magic in the mundane. Because this is where so many of the messages really, really do lie. And so the best way, I hate to disappoint you if I did. I know I did not have some shortcut for you on this episode. No, I don't know how to turn you into a master spiritual channel in 24 hours or less. Sorry, I don't think that it works that way. Remember, what did I say is the only thing that determines the quality of the channeler or the message they channel? It's the trust and the intuition. And guess what, pal? Do you think that trust is something that happens overnight? Look at literally any experience in your life that involves true, strong, and deep trust. And then you answer me this. How did that trust show up? How did it come into existence? Did it just happen overnight? Was there some cool shortcut way? No. It took time and dedication. Might have even taken some mistakes and forgiveness along the way. Ahem. Being a little bit nicer to yourself along this way. That's what it takes to building trust in your intuition. Some forgiveness of your own mistakes. Some forgiveness of your own decisions that you've made. The areas where you've been wrong. I think that's the biggest fear everyone has. But what if I'm wrong, Danny? But what if I'm wrong? You're not wrong. If you're channeling, you're not wrong. If you are wrong, then you weren't channeling and you were talking out your ass. And I promise you there's a difference. And I promise you that the more you practice, the more you'll go, oh yeah, no, that was just talking out the ass. There is a difference. Over time, when you really establish a spiritual connection with your intuition, with your higher self, with your spirit team, that relationship, that established connection will look different than the other things that you do that could be mistaken for that, right? So again, I know now when I'm channeling, and way easier. It's so easy to tell versus when I'm just over talking, because I'm able to go, "Oh no, I was totally nervous. I was being fueled by insecurity in the moment." And I just kept talking out of fear of silence or whatever that was, right? In that particular example. When I'm channeling there, I'm not feeling like filled with insecurity. I'm not filled with fear. I'm comfortable. I'm trusting. I'm grounded and centered and open. You'll start to really notice. And this is what I mean. This is where the nuance of channeling really, really does come from. So yeah, no, sorry, there is no shortcut. The main basics here are establishing the connection mainly for yourself, really making it known to yourself. I believe in this, meaning I believe in my ability to do this. I promise you, if you want to really know that you're doing it, you have to believe that you can. There's no way around that. I cannot get you around that. That's why there is no shortcut. That's why I have no special book. That's why I don't have a specific podcast episode. There's nothing I can give you that, on a general sense, that could like turn that key for every single person. That key is going to get turned for every single person from a completely different reason from one to the next. Okay. I promise that what will happen is you, just like any other relationship, significant relationship in your life, what's going to happen is you're going to show up to it. Your intuition, your higher self, and your guides, they're going to show up to it. And you're going to create an organic relationship from there that's all your own. You're going to develop your own voice. You're going to really hear their voices. You're going to start to pick up on the difference in vibe of one guide to the other when it's someone else's past loved one or spirit guide versus your own intuition guiding you and speaking to you. It's literally just practice. You don't have to be a special person. You don't have to have any special set of requirements. You just have to be you. You have to believe that you're able to. And you have to keep showing up to the connection. You have to keep picking up your end. Okay? Now, I hope that this inspires you. I hope it reminds you of the mystic that's always living within you. I hope it reminds you how close magic always is. How easy it is to just pick up your end of the phone at literally any given time. Doesn't matter the moon phase, doesn't matter the sign the sun is in. It doesn't matter what time of day or the date that it is or your energy levels. You always can pick up your end of the phone. And I promise the other end will always get picked up too. You just got to show up and believe that you can. So I hope that this gives you some really good food for thought. I hope that this plants a really good spiritual seed that just blossoms for all of you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm really excited because in That Witch School, we're going to take this episode even deeper and start doing some practice together. I'm really excited. So for That Witch School, their bonus episode, kind of to complement this one, is an exercise to really get them started and practicing. So if that's something that you're also interested in, you are more than welcome to join us in That Witch School, thatwitchnextdoor.com/enroll. You get access to these bonus episodes, bonus content, live lessons, group calls, support, and so much more. On top of just like the most beautiful community of people I ever could have imagined in my life. So we would absolutely love to welcome you over there. Thank you so much for being here today and every day. I appreciate all of you so, so, so much. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week. I will see you soon. Stay safe, have fun, and stay magical out there. Hi, neighbor. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of That Witch Podcast. If you want to support the show and get your hands on some really magical goodies, make sure you check out some of the awesome companies that I'm an affiliate for in the show notes below. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes as well as Spotify now. And really the best way to support That Witch Podcast is just by sharing the show online, like your social media platforms, or telling a friend that you think would enjoy it. If you're looking for more magical content like bonus episodes, classes I teach, and support in your witchcraft, make sure you come check us out in That Witch School, my magical monthly membership with a very welcoming private online community. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list for weekly astro forecasts, journal prompts, and more, and stay up to date with all of the happenings here in the neighborhood.